I mean, if you break your arm, an X-ray gives you this, clean, jagged white line. Totally binary, broken or not broken.
Right.
And we kind of expect that exact same precision from our morality,
Yeah.
right? We want to just point at an action and say, there it is, that's right, or, that's wrong.
Yeah, we want it to be simple.
Exactly. But what if the very language you were taught to use to, like, define your conscience is actually a historical glitch? A glitch that, well, actively makes it easier for humans to justify doing terrible things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So welcome to the Deep Dive, your personal shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we are opening up an incredibly dense, deeply philosophical set of transcripts.
We really are dense.
For sure.
Yeah.
And this source material captures this fascinating back-and-forth dialogue between a human philosopher, who we'll just refer to as the author, and an AI collaborator.
And, the mission they set out on in these transcripts is nothing short of mapping the architecture of human conscience across completely different civilizations.
Which is a huge undertaking.
Right. They are proposing this massive, sweeping thesis that Western civilization actually suffers from a structural conscience deficiency.
A deficiency that's built in.
Exactly. And this isn't just some modern political problem, right? It is baked into the very foundation of Western language and thought. But on the flip side, they explore how global indigenous and Eastern traditions offer a profoundly different blueprint for what it means to be good.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand a structural deficiency, we really have to look at the blueprints. The author argues that this whole problem starts with how different cultures literally constructed the word for conscience.
Yeah, the linguistic root is where the entire Western model kind of goes off the rails, according to the sources.
How so?
Well, in the West, we get the word from the Latin root conscientia, and if you break that down, it translates to knowing with.
Knowing with.
Right. Notice the emphasis on knowing. It frames morality as an epistemic act. Like, it treats conscience as a species of knowledge or a system of logic or a legal code. Yeah, it essentially splits your mind into a courtroom.
Yeah.
You have the accused, you have the internal witness, and you have the judge. And they're all just arguing over the facts of a case.
Right. And you contrast that courtroom with the traditional Chinese concept for conscience, which is liangxin.
Yes, liangxin.
And that translates directly to innate good heart. We are talking about a massive shift in mechanisms here.
Completely.
One is a cognitive process, a debate happening in your head. The other is a pre-existing condition, a physical and emotional state residing in your heart.
And that gap, that space between the head and the heart, is exactly what the author identifies as the fatal flaw of the Western model.
Why fatal, though?
Well, think about how a debate works. If you build your conscience out of argument and knowledge, it means your conscience can be debated.
Oh, right.
It can be qualified, it can be hit with endless what-ifs, and ultimately, if someone is clever enough, it can be out-argued and totally silenced.
It's like if your conscience is just a legal contract in your brain, a smart enough lawyer can always find a loophole.
Exactly.
You can draft a 50-page memo justifying why breaking a rule is actually, the logical choice. But if conscience is an involuntary physical flinch like touching a hot stove, there are no loopholes. You don't debate the hot stove. You just pull your hand away.
Right. And the text actually stress tests this exact loophole using mid-20th century geopolitics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the author points to massive covert actions like the U.S. interventions in Iran in 1953 or Guatemala in 1954.
Okay.
And the argument isn't just about pointing historical fingers, right? It's an analysis of how these actions were reasoned into existence.
Right, the justification.
Exactly. A government can use logic to place those deeds in a strategic box where a purely cognitive, arguable conscience can't reach them to veto them. The brain basically wins the debate, and the heart's natural revulsion is just overruled by logic.
And it's fascinating how the author traces this mechanical flaw all the way back to ancient Greece.
Oh yeah, back to Plato.
Right, the sources note that Plato didn't even have a specific word for conscience. The closest analog was Socrates, who famously relied on his daimonion, this mysterious inner voice.
But the thing is, Socrates' inner voice wasn't a moral compass like we think of it today.
No.
No, the daimonion only ever issued a precognitive no. It was a pure veto.
Just stopping him from doing things.
Exactly. It warned him against certain actions, but it never told him what he should do. It completely lacked a positive grammar.
Wow.
So the legacy the West inherited from this was basically a traffic signal that could occasionally flash red to stop an action, but it never provided an innate heart that grieved when harm was done to others.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back here a little bit. Is treating morality as a system of reasoning really a bad thing?
Well, that's the big question.
Right, because logic and rationality literally built the modern world. They gave us the scientific method, human rights frameworks, modern medicine. If we throw out the courtroom and just run on pure, unfiltered emotion, doesn't that lead to a completely chaotic society where people just act on whatever they feel is right?
That is a totally fair point, and it raises an important question, one the author actually anticipates.
Okay, how do they answer it?
The countermeasure to pure emotional chaos is what the sources call the symmetry principle, or NU, which means seeking truth or symmetry.
Symmetry.
Right. The author insists that any true metric of conscience cannot be a weapon used to bash one specific culture while giving another a free pass. A real innate good heart must hold all powers to the exact same standard.
Meaning the tool of conscience has to cut evenly in every direction.
Yes, exactly.
So if we are examining the cognitive loopholes that justified Western interventions in Iran, we have to apply that exact same scrutiny to the actions of Washington, Jerusalem, and Beijing. The sources explicitly mention events like the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward as moments where that innate standard must be applied. The instant the lens of conscience only focuses on one hemisphere, it stops being philosophy and just becomes geopolitics wearing a moral halo.
Spot on. The symmetry is what grounds the emotion. It prevents the good heart from just being, a blank check for whoever happens to be in power.
But you can't just mandate an innate good heart into existence. If it doesn't come from a law book or a courtroom debate, how does a culture actually understand and develop that instinct?
Right. How do you teach it?
Yeah. And the sources bring up a really famous internet parable to explain the Western mindset versus the indigenous mindset. And if you're listening, you have almost certainly seen this shared on social media. It's the Cherokee Two Wolves story.
Oh, the two wolves. The setup is classic. An elder is speaking to a child, explaining that there is a brutal fight happening inside them between two wolves. One wolf represents evil sow, anger, greed, arrogance, resentment. The other wolf represents good joy, peace, love, humility. And the child asks, which wolf will win?
And the elder replies, the one you feed.
Exactly.
It's literally everywhere. You see it on inspirational posters and self-help books. But the sources drop a massive historical correction about this story.
They do, yeah. The research reveals that this parable is a complete forgery.
Wait, really? A complete forgery?
Totally. It is not authentically Cherokee in any way. The trail actually traces back to 20th century Western evangelicals, prominently figures like Billy Graham.
Wow.
Yeah, they created or adapted the story to perfectly illustrate the Christian concept of original sin and what we call a Manichaean worldview.
Manichaean meaning treating the world and the human soul as a zero-sum battlefield. It's a binary war to the death between total light and total darkness, where the only victory is the absolute annihilation of the enemy.
Right, and the irony is just staggering. This viral piece of supposedly ancient native wisdom is actually the Western conscience deficiency wearing a disguise.
That is wild. It isolates the individual and turns morality into an internal extermination war. You have to starve and kill the bad wolf. But contrast that with authentic indigenous and non-Western frameworks explored in the text.
Right, what do those look like?
Well, true global conscience isn't about an isolated war inside the self. It's about cultivation, harmony, and your relationship to the community around you.
So let's look at how that actually functions in practice, because the text gives some incredible examples.
Take the Akan people in Ghana.
Yes.
Their word for conscience is tiboa, which translates to the animal in one's head.
Yes.
But unlike the starving wolf, this animal is grounded in innate goodness and communal welfare.
It's totally different.
Right? It's not an enemy to be killed. It's a living part of you that connects your actions to the health of the whole tribe. It's so foundational that Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, actually wrote a major philosophical work titled Consciencism.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, attempting to build a modern state on this communal instinct rather than Western individualism.
And we see a similar mechanism in Rwanda, too, with the concept of camera.
Camera.
Yeah, it describes a morality that is internally felt firmly situated in the heart, not debated in the head. And for the Lakota people in North America, conscience is explicitly framed as kinship with all beings.
Kinship.
Right. What's fascinating here is that when you look at the global map, almost every traditional tribe and civilization outside the West seems to vote for the heart and the community. Meanwhile, the Western model stands entirely alone with its solitary argumentative head.
I want you to just pause for a second and imagine applying that to your own life.
Yeah.
How different would your daily decisions be if your conscience wasn't a solitary judge sitting in a private windowless courtroom in your brain, but rather an active, felt awareness of the physical and emotional web connecting you to everyone around you?
I mean, it forces a massive shift from isolation to relationship.
Exactly.
But to your earlier point, where does that relational feeling actually originate? Like before it becomes a formal philosophy like Liangson or Tahoe, what is the psychological root of it?
Well, the author locates this root in a very specific, grounded place, the agrarian soil.
The soil.
Yeah. By observing traditional southwestern Chinese tribes and Indian traditions, the author realized that the good heart is originally born out of a profound sense of gratitude. Specifically, gratitude toward the laboring beast.
The buffalo.
Exactly.
Think about the life of an agrarian community. The buffalo plows the heavy, muddy fields. It pulls the massive loads of cargo. It walks in endless circles to turn the mills that grind the grain.
Just nonstop work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and eventually it gives its life to feed the humans. Its labor is unending and completely unrewarded in any human economic sense.
And the human heart, before any laws are written down, registers that massive imbalance. We witness this immense gift of unending labor, and the heart naturally feels a debt.
Right, a debt.
This silent observational gratitude is what eventually ripens into the concept of fairness. And I just love how the sources frame this. Fairness isn't a legal statute. Fairness is the heart keeping a ledger it was never asked to keep.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And the sources connect this agrarian ledger to a monumental collision in religious history.
Oh, right, with Moses.
Yeah, think of the biblical story of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai, carrying the stone tablets of the law, only to find the Israelites worshiping the golden calf.
And Moses reacts with absolute fury. He just smashes the tablets. It's framed in the text as this righteous anger against idolatry.
But the author suggests we look a little closer at the mechanics of that exact moment. The terrified people at the foot of the mountain were desperately reaching for the only grammar of the divine that they actually understood.
Because they were agrarian people.
Exactly. They were trying to honor the laboring beast, speaking the language of the buffalo and the calf. And Moses counters that with the ultimate Western epistemic act. A literal written legal code carved in stone, enforced by rage and destruction.
Which brings in a brilliant connection to the philosopher Spinoza. Centuries after Moses, Spinoza looked at religious texts and argued that a God who rages, who gets jealous, who violently breaks things when disobeyed, is not actually representing divine authority.
Right.
Spinoza said that it's simply human passion and political dominance projected onto the cosmos.
Yeah.
Spinoza used immense intellectual rigor to reason his way to a fair, impersonal God that doesn't operate on rage, and his community totally excommunicated him for it.
They couldn't handle it.
Right. So if we synthesize all this, it leads to a really powerful conclusion. Fairness is conscience grown up.
Wow, yeah.
It's the emotional maturity required to look at that scene at Mount Sinai and hold the frightened calf makers, the unending silent labor of the buffalo, and the enraged law-bringing Moses all in one honest frame, without flattening any of them into simple caricature.
It takes a lot of nuance.
It does, and it asks a hard question of us today. When things go wrong in our lives or our societies, are we capable of that kind of nuanced symmetry? Or do we just smash the tablets and yell when we're mad?
Well, that kind of maturity completely changes how a society approaches moral development. If you want to transmit a grown-up conscience to the next generation, you can't just hand them a rule book and threaten them with punishment.
Right, which is where it gets really interesting. The sources dive into one of the most iconic fables in Chinese literature to illustrate how this transmission happens. The story of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah, in his origin story, he is raised by these scolding ants who constantly berate him, calling him a naughty malao, which is the word for monkey.
Right, and the Monkey King is the perfect allegory for this entire discussion. He represents raw, dazzling, limitless intelligence that is completely devoid of an internal conscience.
Just pure intellect.
Exactly. At the beginning of his epic, he causes absolute havoc in heaven. He gets his hands on this cosmic measuring needle, a tool originally designed to calm the oceans, and he just uses it to wreck everything in his path for his own amusement.
Right, so he is pure intellect acting without any moral governor.
To stop the destruction, a monk tricks him into wearing a golden ring or fillet around his head. Whenever the monkey misbehaves or acts selfishly, the monk chants a specific spell, and the golden ring tightens, causing the Monkey King agonizing, paralyzing pain.
So it's basically pain as a crude control mechanism.
In the author's framework, yes, that golden ring is the ultimate symbol of the Western conscientia. It is the external law. It is control by the threat of punishment.
The courtroom.
Right. It's the courtroom sanction clamped directly onto your skull. It forces good behavior, but only through fear.
But the profound payoff of the fable happens at the very end of his epic journey. The Monkey King finally achieves enlightenment. He reaches Buddhahood, and one of his first acts is to reach up to the monk and ask him to please remove this painful golden ring.
And the monk simply tells him to feel his own head.
The ring is already gone. It just vanishes.
It does. The external sanction vanishes the exact instant the conscience becomes internal.
That is so cool.
Yeah, the core aha moment of the sources is that you do not need the painful external law of the courtroom once you have finally internalized the liangsin, the good heart.
Right.
When the innate desire to maintain harmony takes over, the threat of punishment becomes entirely obsolete.
That is just a staggering way to understand moral education.
Oh.
And the sources connect this ancient fable to a very modern, real-world application through the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire.
Freire is such a vital figure here because he figured out how to build that internal conscience in an entire population.
Okay, how did he do that?
Well, he developed a pedagogy in the mid-20th century called conscientização, which translates to critical consciousness.
Yeah.
And the engine of his method was plain speech.
Plain speech. He completely bypassed elite academic jargon. He taught literacy and critical thinking using the generative words of the people. Words pulled straight from their daily agrarian lives. Words like the soil, the harvest, the buffalo, the monkey. Freire basically proved that true conscience doesn't gatekeep behind dense philosophy. It speaks plainly and directly to the poor and the marginalized.
But, we have to look at how the external power structures reacted to that.
Right.
The act of using plain speech to build internal conscience among the poor was viewed as incredibly dangerous by those holding the golden rings.
The ones of the power.
Yeah. Freire's literacy efforts were so radical and so effective at empowering the Brazilian underclass that they were deemed a massive threat to the established order. The sources note that this widespread awakening actively contributed to the 1964 Brazilian coup.
Wow. And again, the author brings this up, not to draft some political manifesto, right? But just to show the mechanics of power.
Right, just reporting what happened.
Yeah. The sources point out that this coup was co-authored by conservative Brazilian elites alongside U.S. figures, specifically naming Vernon Walters, a U.S. military attaché. We're just reporting what the text says here, but the stress test reveals that when an empowered, literate underclass develops its own critical consciousness, existing power structures, both domestic and foreign, will often use the logic of stability to shut it down.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author argues we are facing this exact same mechanical crisis today with modern technology.
You mean AI?
Think about modern artificial intelligence. AI is the Monkey King's magic staff.
Oh, yeah.
It is a dazzling, world-altering, almost cosmic intelligence. But it possesses the capacity to absolutely wreck heaven if it is not wedded to a strong moral governor.
Right. And the author actually coins a specific term for what we need, AIWI. Yeah. Artificial intelligence paired with wisdom and internal conscience.
AIWI, yeah.
We have the intelligence part figured out. But the pressing question is, are we trying to control it by clamping external golden rings of regulation onto it, or are we fundamentally designing it with an internal good heart?
It really is the ultimate test of whether our technological capacity has vastly outpaced our moral development.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a metaphor from the text that perfectly captures how we might actually build that internal conscience.
Right. The author uses the metaphor of a stone tumbler. In the Western courtroom model, we treat conscience like a solitary stone, just sitting alone on a desk, somehow trying to polish itself in private through sheer logic.
But anyone who has seen a rock tumbler knows that's not how stones get smooth.
Hmm.
You can't isolate a stone to polish it.
Exactly. True conscience requires the tumbler. The tumbler is a drum full of stones. It's our communities, our ants, our histories, our relationships.
The friction.
Yeah, every time you make a decision, you bump into your neighbor. That constant, unavoidable social friction is what wears down the sharp, jagged edges of selfishness. We smooth each other out through shared life and plain speech.
So what does this all mean for you? The sources mention a famous, highly pragmatic quote by the former Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. It matters not if the cat is white or black, as long as it catches mice.
Which is the ultimate statement of the epistemic mind.
Valuing raw results and logic over everything else.
It's pure pragmatism.
But based on everything we've unpacked today, here's the final challenge for you to consider. If your cat catches the mouse, but it does so by burning down the entire barn, wait, is it still a good cat?
Right, that's the real question.
In your own life, especially as we navigate this wild age of AI and overwhelming information, how do you measure your actions? Do you judge your success only by the logical results you achieve? Or does your internal conscience, your good heart, still care deeply about the color of the means you use to get there?
It's the profound difference between relying on the external threat of a golden ring to keep you in line and doing the hard work to actually possess the internal compass of the good heart.
Keep tumbling your stones. Keep listening to that tiny, fleeting, precognitive gate before you act. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.